farmer the farmer takes the wife. How old Dario's wife takes the child takes the nurse takes the dog. How old Dario, the dog takes the cat takes the rat. Cat takes the cheese. How dare you? The cheese stands alone. Farmer in the dale, the farmer in the dale. How dare you? The farmer in the dale. Dickory dock the mound. Three blind mice, see how they roam, see how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife, who cut off the tail with a carving knife. Ever see such a sight in your life? Three blind mice, three blind mice. Three blind mice, see how they run, see how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife, who cut off the tail with a carving knife. Did you ever see such a sight in your life as three blind mice? Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the cloud. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock, hickory dickory dock. The mouse went up the cloud. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down. Hickory dickory dock. Cat takes the rat takes the cheese. I hold Dario, the cheese stands alone. Farmer in the dale, the farmer in the dale. I owe the Dario, the farmer in the dale.
You're talking, aren't you? Get him tired. Leave the rest of their substance to their babes. As for me, I'll behold thy face. In righteousness I shall be satisfied when I awake with thy likeness. I will love thee, O Lord. Lord is my rock, fortress, my deliverer, strength and buckler, horn of salvation, the high tower, who is worthy to be praised. Call him Lord. So shall I say from mine enemies, sorrows of death compassed me, and the floods of ungodly men made me afraid. The sorrow of hell compassed me about, the snares of death prevented me. In my distress I called upon the Lord, I cried upon the Lord. He heard my voice out of his temple, and made me cry before him, and cry came before him. And my cry came before him, even into his ears. Then the earth shook and trembled, because they cast a law, and they said, I tell you what now, everybody shave their heads on top. That way you know, because is it against the law to wear a hairpiece? Or you're going to shave it, put a halo on it. That way you show that it's bare naked. That's what they said. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken, because he was wroth. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also, and came down, and darkness was under his feet. And he rode upon a cherub, and did fly. Yeah, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the sky. Some of them answer us darkly, and the brightness that was before him, his thick clouds passed. Hailstones and coals of fire. The Lord hath thundered in his heavens, and the highest gave his voice. Hailstones and coals of fire. Now, is that not the name of a book? Yeah, he sent out his arrows and scattered them, and he shot out lightnings and discomfited them. Then the channels of waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered. At thy rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of thy nostrils. Man, I should just start marking the other one. He sent from above, he shut me, he drew me many waters. Because the judgments were before me, and I did not put away his statutes from me. I was also upright before him, and I kept myself from mine iniquity. Therefore hath the Lord recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his eyesight. With the merciful thou wilt show thyself merciful, and upright man thou wilt show thyself upright. Pure thou wilt show thyself pure, and with it forward thou wilt show thyself forward. For thou wilt save the afflicted people, but wilt bring down high looks. For thou wilt light my candle, and Lord my God will enlighten my darkness. And Abraham called that El Elyon, all the same, King of Salem. King of Salem. Where's that? there's a Galilee, and right next Shechem, Salem. Over there, Elion. For I have wounded them in astonishment, and they were not able to arise. They are fallen under my feet. For thou hast girded me with strength into battle. I have pursued mine enemies and overtaken them, neither did I turn again till they were consumed. Thou hast subdued under me those that rose up against me. Thou hast also given me the necks of mine enemies, that I might destroy them that hate me. They cried, but there were none to save them, even to the Lord. I'm still in astonishment, but he answered them not. And did I beat them small as the dust before the wind, and did cast them out as the dirt in the street. Thou hast delivered me from the strivings of the people, and thou hast made me the head of the heathen. A people whom I have not known shall serve me. As soon as they hear of me, they shall obey me. The strangers shall submit themselves unto me. The strangers shall fade away and be afraid out of their closed places. The Lord liveth, and blessed my rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. King of kings, it is God that avengeth me, and subdueth the people under me. He delivereth me from mine enemies. Yea, thou liftest me up above those that rise up against me. Thou hast delivered me from the violent man. Therefore I give thanks unto the Lord, O the heathen, and sing praises unto thy name. Among the heathen, great deliverance given he to his king, and showeth mercy to his anointed, to David, and to his seed forevermore. David, seed Jesse, and Joshua, son of Nun, are like Gemini twins. All of that. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. The law of the Lord is perfect, and converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. Which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoices as a strong man to run a race. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and the words to the end of the world, and him set a tabernacle before the sun. The law of the Lord is perfect. The statutes of the Lord are right. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to the desire of them are they than gold, yea, a bunch of fine gold, sweeter than also than any honey, a honeycomb. Moreover, by them is the servant warned, and in keeping of them there is great reward. Who can understand his errors? And the arrows, and cleanse thou me from secret faults. Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then shall I, what are you doing? Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then shall I be upright, and I shall be innocent from the great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Nothing marked there. But I am a worm, and no man a reproach of men, and despised of the people. All they that see me laugh me at scorn. They shoot out the lip, they shake the head, saying, He trusts on the Lord, he would never deliver him, seeing he delighted in him. But thou art he that took me out of the womb. Thou didst make me hope when I was upon my mother's breast. But be thou not far from me, O Lord, O my strength, haste thee to help me. Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling from the power of the dog. Save me from the lion's mouth, the lion, for thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorns. I will declare thy name unto the brethren. In the midst of the congregation will I praise thee. The voice of the Lord is upon the waters. The God of glory thundereth. The Lord is upon many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. The voice of the Lord breaketh the cedars. Yea, the Lord breaketh the cedars of Lebanon. He maketh them also to skip like a calf. Lebanon, Syrian, like a young unicorn. The voice of the Lord delivereth the flames of fire. The voice of the Lord shaketh the wilderness. The Lord shaketh the wilderness of Kadesh. I wonder if that was far enough on that side. It's not. To show Kadesh. Close. Wilderness of Kadesh, thou hast turned, be thou my helper, thou hast turned for me my mourning into dancing. Thou hast put off my sackcloth and girded me with gladness, to the end that my glory may sing praise to thee and not be silent. O Lord my God, I will give thanks unto thee forever. Whoa. Yes. My heart is indicted a good matter. I speak of the things which I have made touching the king. My tongue is the pen of a ready writer. Gird thy sword upon thy thigh, O mighty, with the glory and thy majesty. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, in the mountain of his holiness, beautiful for situation. The joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion, on the sides of the north, the city of great King. God is known in her palaces for a refuge. For lo, the kings were assembled, they passed by together. They saw it, and so they marveled. They were troubled, and hasted away, for fear took hold upon them there, and pain as a woman in travail. Walk in Zion, walk about it, and go around about her. Tell the towers thereof. Mark ye well her bulwarks. Consider her palaces. Mark ye well her bulwarks. Consider her palaces. Her bulwarks, her palaces, that ye may tell it to the generation following. Walk about Zion and go around about her. Tell the towers thereof. For this God is our God forever and ever. He will be our guide even unto death. Hear this, all ye people, give ear, and all the inhabitants of the world bow, and low, and rich, and poor, together. My mouth shall speak of wisdom and the meditation. Mine heart shall be of understanding. I will incline mine ear to a parable, I will open my dark saying upon the heart. Fear and trembling are come upon me, and horror hath overwhelmed me. And I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then would I fly away, and be at rest. Lo then, would I wander far off, and remain in the wilderness? I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and tempest. Destroy, O Lord, and divide their tongues. For I have seen violence and strife in the city. Day and night they go about upon the walls thereof, mischief and sorrow are in the midst of them. Wickedness is in the midst thereof, deceit and guile depart not from her streets. For it was not an enemy that approached me, and I could have borne it. Neither was it he that hated me, that did magnify himself against me. Then I would have hid myself from him. But it was thou, O man, mine equal, my guide, and mine acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together. That wasn't marked, and walked into the house of God company. I gotta mark it up. If their poison is like a poison of a serpent, they are like the deaf adder that stoppeth her ear, which will not hearken to the voice of charmers, charming never so wisely. God hath spoken in his holiness. I will rejoice. I will divide Shechem, and mete out the valley of Succoth. Gilead is mine, and Manasseh is mine, Ephraim also, and his strength of mine head. Gilead is mine, and Manasseh is mine, Ephraim also is the strength of mine head. Judah is the lawgiver, Moab is my washpot, and Edom I will cast out my shoe. So if Moab was over south, and Edom to the side, and Judah's already blessed and all at once and more and hard with law to begin with. God has spoken in his holiness. I will rejoice. I will divide Shechem. You know, I heard the guy today. It's cool listening to opposites. You can learn so much from opposites and what's not said. Surely men of low degree are vanity, and men of high degree are a lie, to be laid in the balance. They are altogether lighter than vanity. Laid in the balance. Just like Genesis 1:1. Why leap ye hills high? This is the hill which God desires to dwell in. Yea, the Lord will dwell in it forever. There were chariots and more, and thou hast assembled on high. Thou hast led captivity captive. Thou hast received gifts for men, yea, for the rebellious also, that the Lord God might dwell among them. There is little Benjamin with their ruler, the princes of Judah and their council, the princes of Zebulun and the princes of Naphtali. Thou God hath commanded thy strength, strengthen, O God, which thou hast brought us, because of thy temple. At Jerusalem shall kings bring presents unto thee. For God will save Zion, and will build the cities of Judah, that they may dwell there, and have it in possession. Whoa. there's a Japa and a Jaffa, and it's only one sound off. Probably need to do some housekeeping first, though. But we say and believe that the Son is not unbegotten, so he's begotten of God. He's begotten of God, nor in any way part of the unbegotten, meaning he does have man being. He could be filled like us, nor in any way part of the unbegotten, meaning angels, that he actually experienced manhood and felt like us, and that he does not derive his substance from any matter. So he created everything, so he is matter. He and the Father are one. All divine. Areas. And then there was somebody coming, they was talking to you with a hat on and no hat on, no hairpiece, and then somebody whispering in the ear. With Sibelius at the time, and he stressed the oneness of the Godhead, and adhering to the divinity as well. He stressed the oneness of the Godhead to the point of denying any meaningful distinction between the members of him and the Father. It's divine. And he used verses to say that this ruled out the possibility of three distinct, because he was divine. He was God. He was the promise. And whether or not you believe any of this or not, he's saying same thing Arius said. It's just, he said this first and Arius said that last. And he also claimed the three names all belong to one divine person who manifests himself at different times, meaning that he was separate from God, and that he was actually flesh, and could even say, hey, no man knows the day or the hour, to the point where he felt like us. Pain. But even in this form of stupid flesh we are, mortal, that he felt as a man. So he was not in any way of some type of angel or something, unbegotten type of angel. Talking about from an angel frame of reference, he felt like a man. And but yeah, he said there weren't three distinct persons right here. But see, when you argue and get whispered to get that and that issue, when it whispers in your ear to decide to have those fights, which is like right here, to a said date of 431 at Ephesus. and breaks off accordingly. And where it breaks off at Ephesus leads to a word that gets put to a word and leads to something today called a word, but at what point that word became the type of philosophy as it was initially here, and any changes, and even to today, these words are just words. But if we're right here, then we got who won. Yeah, who won on that one? Then that leads to another. You got Arius and Sabellius, but in that case, you needed to say it the way Sabellius said it, in order. So in essence, he affirmed a variety, because Arius is accused of such and such, which led to then another discussion over Nestorius, and Cyril of Alexandria. So Cyril of Alexandria says, a definition of nature. Now, with Cyril of Alexandria. And on the basis of another word called natures, are there one or more natures? So to get you to discuss whether or not you could kill God in a fashion, in a man, and it affects God, which would be a type of person, another definition of person, except now we're using natures, and we're using wrote backwards. You got Nestorius losing out over Cyril of Alexander, and Nestorian was called Nestorian. So they took out one, they took out another one. So now they're on to a definition of three designated persons. And where you went from Arius saying there is no division between God and Jesus, but now it's to the point where it can even be so, because there's another one. It's probably a fake or a modern reprint done like later, but that's like the last Mark Antony looking dude, looking thing. And at that same time, see Callistus, the first pope during Alexander, and it's interesting what we learn from what's not written, especially with old Cyril. But in the stories, what's crazy is to define that it wasn't, when you assume the order means a relevance, a conclusion, because of a issue. Callistus, Pope, was spelled Callistus, and it's like drachma, it's like Roman, it's like denarii, and it's like different names mean different things, authorities. And if you change your names, sometimes that's obvious a good choice, because you might be hunted down and hung. He was a slave. He lost all his money entrusted to him, ran away and was caught, was sentenced to hard labor for starting a fight, faced harsh criticism. Some of the leading minds of the early church endured a schism, and to top it off, saw his history written by one of his bitterest enemies. This makes it difficult to tell where fact and fiction part company with the 16th Pope, particularly since the Acts of Callistus, not to be confused with the Acts of Constantine, other acts of relevant or not of Alexander, used for subsequent biographies, is apocryphal, but enough has come down to us to suggest Callistus was more sinned against than sinning. The future pope was the slave of a Christian man named Copiers. I think Porphyry is Justin. Why did they not have so much written by their enemies that should have been kept? And how Cyril of Alexander happened to be one, but the reason he is kept and censored, but kept. And it's funny how Nestorius ended up saying something, and then it gets turned, and then up today they'll say, oh, well, persons mean different persons, and he wasn't actually a Messiah. And it'll get said to mean what people will try to get one to believe, that whatever was said was what was meant, and hang on by fingernails for managing the wealth aims of the Christian community. Some accounts have him starting a bank to handle the money and then losing it all. Then he ends up taking over. Then incompetence and mismanagement, even his enemies suggest only pecuniary difficulties rather than theft. With Carpothmus demanding an accounting, Callistus hopped on a fast ship in port, intended to go wherever it took him. The ship was slow to leave. However, as the master closed and Callistus jumped overboard, they changed identities, only to be fished out by sailors and returned to Rome in his master's keeping. The depositors asked for Callistus to be freed. The depositors freed in hopes that they could somehow recover their money, and this was done. So they freed him. They made him king. Accounts vary as to what happened next in repetition to heresies written by Paulus of Rome. It's interesting how a lot of them wrote in Greek, though. And how much other writing was written that Callistus attempted suicide by mob by creating a disturbance in the local synagogue. The Jews were gathering for Sabbath. Subsequent historians suggest that deposits had been lost in some dealings with Jewish bankers and was an attempt to gain restitution. Whatever the truth of the matter, punches were thrown, a minor riot ensued, and the future pope was hauled before the prefect. It's interesting to note he was charged with preventing the worship rites freely, promised under the law, as well as creating a disturbance. He was flogged and sentenced to hard labor in the mines, which was a major source of silver for the time. His death sentence, given the harsh conditions, yet he would spend only a year there. At the time, Victor I was pope, and a Christian concubine of the Emperor Commodus. Approached him desiring to do a good deed. He suggested that she ask the emperor to free the Christians sentenced to the silver mines and provided a list for their purpose. She did. Interesting, Callistus was deliberately left off the list by the Pope. When the governor brought the news that the Christians would be freed, Callistus managed to plead his case and was released with them. He returned a free man and even managed to wrangle a pension. Old Victor wasn't Victor that time. If he had to pay a pension, and at some point his processing proved he was made a deacon, and he became a close ally of the next pope. Zephyrinus' strange credibility at times by suggesting bribes and flattery were key to restoring the fortunes of Callistus. He was made a deacon, and he became a close ally of the next pope. Some people say he pimped his way up there, bribed him with claiming that the other one was that corrupt. Some of them weren't happy. Said that Callistus was the true power behind the throne. So they gave it to, they were people beefing him up. He had a good marketing mechanism. He was put in charge of cemeteries. The emerging controversies of the 3rd century. But that's what I'm saying, when you choose Arius, and then you have Sabellius, and then you have them fighting, throw them both out, claim to 3 persons, then get it used where they're actually not even Messiah, because they're agreeing and saying the same words. It's secret. Pro tip is the word from the doctor is the same, whether it's a good doctor or a bad doctor. It's the understanding and the interpretation of what's being said. So while discussing the Trinity, the sword of theology is sharpened in the waystone of heresy, and debate was key to developing doctrine. Meanwhile, other not focusing on discussions were trying to keep the community united while also putting down heresies around them, and they're local. They were growing corn. Adoption. The idea that Jesus was merely human until his baptism would have to get labeled on one to say that it was separate in that aspect. But it could be one and separate, not in the adoption sense, where baptism was a significant event to separate the divinity, absoluteness, in a different order than Sabellianism, saying that the idea that God is one and the Trinity is merely 3 different modes of acting at the same time or separate, and acting rather than 3 persons. Persons meaning that it is divine and not a separation. It's a one. Just like the Trinity in different directions. But when you claim something different than what it's meant, or assume a reaction in an order of events, talk to him. Hippolytus went so far to accuse the Pope himself of being a modalist, although it's clear that he was not. The popes, on the other hand, regarded Hippolytus and others as atheists, possibly because they failed to fully grasp the language of hypostasis. It's quite obvious that Callistus was no modalist. He would become the Pope who excommunicated Sabellius in 220. Mercy. Mercy Warren. She's finishing up the third volume, third book. Must read. Callistus decided he's going to let some of the heathen back in communion if they repented and said, I'm sorry, or whatever. And according to some people, Tertullian and Hippocrates was outraged that certain people could be reconciled. Now, like I said, the same word is sweet and sour all at the same time. Just to understand. And this could be outrage because an allowance and calling something as though it were not. As long as it's called what it is, and everything is wretched. And the only thing, I guess the antithesis to reconciled would be, philosophy. Because as much as written, there's an understanding that at least two aren't, not compatible to be reconciled. Throughout all these books, the argument seems surprising to us now. For the early centuries, the notion of a church that included struggling and forgiving sinners along with saints had not yet taken hold. And rigours could plausibly argue that the Pope's mercy was not merely a scandal, but heretical. So outraged were the rigorists that they created one of the earliest schisms of the church. But if you call in one at the same time, you're Arian, or you're Sabellian, or you're Nestorian, or you're a Cyril of Alexandrian, or you're Trinitarian, or you're pagan, or you're Armenian, or you're Syrian Phoenician. And it's interesting because at this time you got Latin that goes back to 500. And with 500, Latin. And they even wonder if Philo even knew how to write Hebrew. Yet, they say the division outlasted Callistus, who died in 222. And he's got a martyrology in some lineages. Hippocrates and Pontian are believed to have reconciled before both died in the harsh conditions, according to this paper, harsh conditions of their imprisonment. These arguments seem surprising to us now, but in the early centuries the notion of a church that included struggling and forgiving sinners along with saints had not yet taken hold. And rigorists could plausibly argue that the Pope's mercy was not merely a scandal, but heretical. Hippocrates of Rome, one of the leading Latin theologians of the age, was elected by his followers as an alternative bishop of Rome. Considered an anti-pope. What's interesting, reading Lightfoot and just the definitions, we're looking at a look, much like Usher, just looking at stuff. Not that you have to agree with conclusions, but as he looking through words, Antipatris is called by some Bethlehem, and by Josephus, Kaf Farzaba, but when rebuilt by Herod was named Antipater, in memory of his father Antipater. It was situated in the best plain of his kingdom, rich in springs and woods, and was from Joppa 150 furlongs, that is 18 miles in the way from Jerusalem to the west part of Galilee, and from the place that is usually assigned to it in the maps, which is in the middle of Samaria. The Jews oppose Antipatris and Gabbath, that is east and west, as the sacred writings do Dan and Beersheba, north and south. It was situated in the best plain of his kingdom, rich in wood springs, and was from Joppa 150 furlongs, that is 18 miles, in the way from Jerusalem to the west part of Galilee. And far from the place that is usually assigned to it in the maps. Apamia, there were, say the Jews, two Apamias, one the upper and another the lower. In one were Jews of pure blood, and the other, and between them was the space of 4,000 paces. Apamia, says Pliny, was in old Syria, and had the river Maris running betwixt. It was otherwise called Sepham, and was the utmost coast of the land of Israel, north and northeast. The Amorite mountain took its beginning from Kodesh Barnea, the southern border of the land of Israel, and ran forward into Judea and Hebron. The name only changed into the hill country of Judea. So much mistaken are Andromachus and others that bring it almost from the Red Sea. A city near Labinas, Decapolis town, a town betwixt Rhino, Korah, and Gaza. Rhino, Korah. Rhino, Korah, and pretty cool armor. Antioch. There are two cities of that name. The one in Pisidia, a province of the Lesser Asia, otherwise called Caesarea, the other in Syria, once the head of the Syro-Grecian Empire, before it went totally east, afterward the seat of the Roman government. There the disciples of Christ were first called Christians. Of old it was called Hamath, but afterward Antioch, from Antiochus, as bloody persecutor of the church and truth, as ever. Elath, within the jurisdiction of Judah, and in the tribe of Benjamin, lying between Samaria and Jerusalem. utmost borders of Palestine, Elath, join to the South Desert and the Red Sea. The utmost borders, whence men sail out of Egypt to India, and thence into Egypt, where was the Roman legion, called Decima, said St. Aaron, and was under the disposition of the Duke of Palestine, saith the Notitia, but it should rather seem that it was Elath in the south of Judah, the other being far distant, where there was a Duke of Arabia, in which even the Red Sea was, as well as Palestine. Alexander. But old Lightfoot, we just went through and found out how things, some of them, were on maps, not on maps. Other people said north, south, east, west. Alexander, there was in ages, rocks of ages, and a vast number of the Jews, where they had many synagogues with a cathedral, in which were 70 stalls, as others report, and afterward a temple built by Onias. And this, they'll say, was there. But when they say it was there, for so many times written at the end of a sentence that's in Josephus, that's in wars, but not in Appian, same story. And whether or not Philo could even correspond in Hebrew, and whether afterward a temple built by Onus is probable, or a renewal that Joseph and Mary came hither with our Savior. The only people that left with Cleopatra stayed, and some people stayed, and later it was killed. Samaritans was already all over the place and called by different names. The same with Heber, 2 Kings, say some books, but they argue, so some a county of notable fame in Assyria, and so-called from the river. There were several places of that name, as Adida in the valley, Adida of the mountain, under which lay the plains of Judea, Adida in Galilee, before the great plain, perhaps the same as Edel, and several, Adida, not far from Jordan, as we have in Josephus. Well, Jordan, big river, turn me loose, set me free, whither David betook himself when he escaped from Gath. And it's crazy that in like 4 copies, certain Greek was written, and Gaul could be replaced with Galatians, and they'll say it's later. It's in minuscules and a few places. But it's composed of lots of stuff. And when he escaped from Gath, and where he composed the 142 Psalm, it was in the tribe of Judah. Tribe of Benjamin in the east of Bethel, and not far from Beth-lehem. Beth-lehem, Joppa and Joppa. I didn't get to that. Aya, the jurisdiction of Judah, and in the tribe of Benjamin, between Samaria and Jerusalem. because he troubled Israel. Acre. Joshua 7. Acre. 1 Chronicles 27. Because he troubled Israel. Joshua 7. The maps of Canaan do most of them lay this valley and Shechem at a great distance. But if it be observed, it's not improbable that the valley runs between Jerusalem and Evil. Josephus speaks of the great valley of Samaria. Shechem, Shechem, Samaria, region north, Acrabatina, and saves the Jews a day's journey from Jerusalem. Adam, a city of Betar against Jericho, a little removed from Jordan, was the center where the waters of Jordan parted, and the station of the ark. It was 12 miles. 12 miles, says the Jew, from Saturn and Saturn. From Adam. A little removed from the Jordan. Was a center where the waters of Jordan parted, and the station of the ark. It was 12 miles, say the Jews, from Zaretan. Abilon, a province of Syria, and so called from city Alba. Word sounds so near the word Havla that it may well be supposed to have descended from it. And the name of the place that the son Shush, that is, with the brethren point in Arabia and thereabout, Abel Beth-shemesh, a town in Upper Galilee, not far from Dan, Caesarea, Abel Malloy, and Manasseh on this side of Jordan, 10 miles from Beth-lehem, where dwelt Elisha the prophet. Abel Shittim, where the Israelites pitched their tent, immediately before, and not as in the English, after they passed the river Jordan. This place Josephus calls Abila, and Seth is in Perea, 60 furlongs, or 7 miles and half from Jordan. And say the Jews from Beth-lehem, 12 miles. Abel Shittim, land beyond Jordan, or Perea, excluding Samaria. Akrabban, land beyond Jordan. Akrara. Subaru, Acura, land beyond Jordan, excluding Samaria, to which, if we add Idumea, then was Palestine, divided into 5 countries: Idumea, Judea, Samaria, Galilee, and the country beyond the Jordan. It's like the Gileadites made it to the country beyond the Jordan. They made it to the Promised Land. There was also an imperial division into Palestine, more especially so-called the head, which Caesarea Palestine II, the head of which was Jerusalem, and Palestine called Salutrus, the helpful, which is likely was the same with Idumea, the less, the head of which may be supposed to be Gaza. Abel are one and the same, the Hebrew Abel being, according to Greek terminology, Abela. There were many places of that name. listening, so called because it had been a city in the tetrarchy of Lysanus, Syria, and along it, according to Ptolemy, this and that. Oh, we gotta get on there with Ptolemy too, and they have a tradition, and not amiss, that the utmost bounds of the land of Israel, including the land beyond the Jordan, was within 3 days' journey of Jerusalem. They have a tradition that the utmost bounds of the land of Israel, including the land beyond the Jordan, was within 3 days' journey of Jerusalem. Sometimes the land of Israel is bounded with Euphrates, east, and as deeds the Holy Scriptures do, and contiguous with Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, the river only between. It was anciently divided according to the people and nations that inhabited it. First possessed at the children of Israel, it was parted among the 12 tribes, and upon the division of the 10 tribes they were known by 2 names, Judah and Israel. But after they returned from Babylon, it was divided by the Jews into Judea and Galilee, and the land beyond Jordan, Perea, excluding Samaria, to which if we add Idumea, then was Palestine, divided into 5 countries: Idumea, Judea, Samaria, Galilee, and the country beyond the Jordan. Others do measure it by the coast. If Phoenicia be included, then from Sidon to Rhino, all the shields, river of Egypt, according to Antonius. But if Phoenicia be excluded, then from the south bounds of that to Rhino, 189 miles, according to Pliny. So if the south was 189, from beyond Ephesus, but if it's in your backyard, then breadth of the land within Jordan is not always the same, since the seas bounding on all sides here in the Mediterranean, there are those of Sodom, Gennesaret, and Symmachus with the river Jordan, cannot but make the space for an equal by the various windings. So one measurement, you have to start the widest to the coast, east-west, looking at it that way. But if we take the measure of it from the Bay of Gaza to the shore of the Dead Sea, we'll see it's upward of 50 miles. And if we extend it also beyond Jordan, then from Gaza, metropolis of Moab, it's 110 miles, as may be computed from Ptolemy and Pliny. Back to Ptolemy's maps. The Jews do say that the land of Israel contains a square of 400 farsakhs. If a farsakh is 4 miles, 4 times 400 makes 1,600. But no, there's a table of names. They divide it, length and breadth. The length of it said, from Dan to Beersheba, from the entry of Hamath north to the sea plain. It says some people reckon it from the mountains of Amana, upper of Tarnagola, which is at the neck of Labadness, to the river Egypt. Ascalon, Gerar, they said they just figured that out. They say it. And the country that was from thence called Gereku, and was in the tribe of Judah, though possessed by the Philistines. It was from Jerusalem 520 furlongs, or 65 miles. From Azotus 25 miles. From Gaza 10, saith Mr. Sandys, or as Antonius, 16 miles. From the river of Egypt 54 miles. From Erythropolis 24 miles. From Jamna 20 miles. It was a place, say the Jews, given to much poisoning. The south from thence was accounted. There was also another Ascalon. There was also another Ascalon. The new Ascalon, another new Ascalon, which was built by Ezra, and was 4 farsa, or 16 miles, from the old. It's kind of like Ephesus moved, except what's a stadia, and the old is 16 nearer Jerusalem than the old, saith Benjamin. To diddliness. Asher, a tribe in Galilee, it did extend itself north to south, even Carmel to Sidon and Lebanon. Lay between Naphtali, running along with it in length, and the coast of Tyre to Sidon, or the Great Sea. It abounded in corn and metallic mines. Beth-lehem. It was the land of Benjamin, and the utmost bound of it toward Ephraim. It was seated in a mountainous country, opposite to Jerusalem. Opposite to Jerusalem, toward Ephraim. You just say something in an order, or programming, opposite to Jerusalem, in a right line north and south, and not as the maps. Remote and all slope. All slope. In a line, right line, north and south, and not as the maps, remote and dislope. So you got Arius, Sabellius, you got Nestorius, Cyril, Isaiah. Got remote and distant. It was afterward called Beth-lehem, by way of reproach, as Jerusalem is called Sodom. Because of Jeroboam's calves that were placed there. Beth-thera, a city in the valley Perion, in a line right line north and south, and not as the maps, remote and a slope. Jeroboam's calves, city, valley, and Perea, Beth-horon. There were 2 places in that name under the Old Testament. The upper, which was Ephraim, Joshua, and the nether, Benjamin, or extreme part, South Ephraim. South Ephraim. The last is called by Josephus Beth-thera, and is the only Beth-thera under the second temple, and according to him stood about 100 furlongs, or 12 miles and a half from Jerusalem. Beth-thera, 12 miles from Jerusalem, upon the public way thence to Caesarea. Josephus, Beth-thera, and is the only Beth-thera under the second temple. Because when you rebuild something back on the same time, it'll be the same place. At the same place. And is the only Beth-thera under the second temple. And according to him, stood about 100 furlongs, or 12 miles and a half from Jerusalem. Upon the public way thence to Caesarea, at which place the passage was very rocky and narrow. Here we Canaanite. Army perished, Joshua 10, not by hail, but stones and stones. Gadara, the Gadarenes up there, the metropolis of Betar, washed by the river Hebraica, from Tiberias, 60 furlongs. Oh, there's another one up there, and near to Gerasa. It was one of the cities of Decapolis. And of heathen jurisdiction, and gave name to the country about it. Galilee, called Issachar, Zebulun, Naphtali, Asher, was part of Dan. In Perea, it was bounded north by the Lebanon and Syria, and on the west by Phoenicia, and on the south by Samaria. It was divided in three parts, the upper called because it abandoned in mountains, which contained Asher and Naphtali, and immediately called Galilee of the Gentiles, and sometimes Gilgal, and secondly the lower, which contained Zebulun, Issachar, because it was a champion, was called the grape field, and thirdly the vale, which is the border of Tiberias. Josephus said there were 204 cities and towns in Galilee that were mere eminent and fortified. That legion at the Gadarenes, fortified town in Britannia, Gamaliel, Gaza, or Isa. The more they talk about it, makes you wonder. And by Eusebius Jones in the tribe of Judah, there were two. And by Eusebius Jones, Gaza, Asa, in the tribe of Judah, there were two, the old and the new. The former was destroyed by Alexander and therefore called desert. It was from the bay 7 furlongs, which was set in long. Ptolemy. Why they do Ptolemy? 10 miles, but more probably 65 in Ptolemy. From the ridge of Egypt, 44 miles, and Azotus, 34 miles, and from Ascalon, 10 or 16. From the Dead Sea, 55 miles. There were two. So there were two Gazas, and there were two. The new was never nearer the bay, was called Malma, and afterwards Constantia, and named so by Constantine, after the name of his sister. Eusebius, or Sozomen, his son Constantinus. Gaza, there was another in Ephraim. 1 Chronicles 7:28. Geter, a town in the mountains part of Betar. Gima, a city in the extreme parts of Samaria, next adjoining to Issachar, near Nain, and Nain in vain. In vain ain't always pride. Gensereth. It's not the Gadarene, though. Cincereth, and the Sea of Galilee. It's one of the 7 seas that the Jews say compass the land, and about 6 miles broad and 16 long. So that's Pliny. But Josephus, 12.5. And Beaufort, 24 in length. And in breadth, 15. So from 24, 6 miles abroad, to as many as 40 miles. 24 at least, from the head of the Jordan to the south part of it. From Samachus 15, it was written the tribe of Naphtali, and not out of it as the map's mistake. It was written the tribe of Naphtali, and not out of it as the map's mistake. See the scheme. In the middle of it was a famous whirlpool called Shinar. It was so called. It was within the tribe of Naphtali. Gibeon lay north of Jerusalem, in the way to the city Samaria. There was a great pool of waters, and perhaps Christ baptized. They were saying there in Solomon's time was the greatest synagogue, the tabernacle being brought therein after Shiloh. Seleucia. I mean, it's right at the beginning. Hath God said. Hath God said. And even in this time, they would say by the account of the Eastern Greeks, it would be 7247, or by the Latin Church, when something 6938, and by the computation of WW 5748, and then by another Roman chronology, be 5688, and then they would even give a separate by certain rabbis. It'd be 5500. So from 5500 to 720 is already what, 1800? 1747, and that's time to do all sorts of stuff. Shiloh, check them. Right there, the Galilee. Right there, vineyard's pretty good. See, Gibeon lay north of Jerusalem in the way to the city Samaria. There was a great pool of waters. Gibeon lay north of the Jerusalem on the way to the city Samaria. There was a great pool of waters. Lay north of Jerusalem in the way to the city Samaria. It lay north of Jerusalem in the way to the city Samaria. There was a great pool of waters. Jerusalem was in the way, on his way to Samaria. There in Solomon's time was the greatest synagogue, the tabernacle being brought thither. After, further to Shiloh. Gilead country lay beyond Jordan and was divided into two parts. There was Mount Gilead, called so from a heap of stones set up for a witness, twixt Jacob and Laban. Gilgal, it was Benjamin, and 50 furlongs, or 6 miles and a quarter, from Jordan. 50 furlongs. 10 furlongs east from Jericho. 10 furlongs east from Jericho was Gilgal. Sometimes Galilee is so called. So sometimes Galilee ten furlongs from Jericho, where the walls come tumbling down. 10 furlongs. So Jericho and Jerusalem and Galilee, and the walls come tumbling down. But it's right here. Gibeon. See Gibeon? It's north of Jerusalem in the way to the city Samaria. Gilead. Jacob and Laban, east and west. There in Solomon's time was the greatest synagogue, tabernacle being brought thither after Shiloh. And then after way on down, it was in Benjamin in 50 furlongs, or 6 miles and a quarter, Gilgal, and Jericho and Galilee. A town beyond Jordan, not far from Betar. Of 11 to Jerusalem, Gophanon. But Ptolemy's, there was a city also of that name betwixt Caesarea and Jerusalem, and it likely was in Jude. There was a city also of that name betwixt Caesarea and Jerusalem. There's a lot of alsos. All souls. Hamath was the utmost point of the land north, and is by some of the Jews understood. And you, Beth-lehem, land of Judah, are in no way least among the princes of Judah, for out of you shall come forth a governor, who shall be shepherd of my people Israel. And you, Beth-lehem, but you, Beth-lehem Ephratah, which is little to be among the thousands of Judah, out of you shall one come unto me, that is to be the ruler in Israel. And you, Beth-lehem, house of Ephratah, are few in number to be reckoned among the thousands of Judah. And yet of you shall one come forth to me, to be a ruler of Israel. Shiloh. It was later moved to Shiloh. This is Latin. This is not yet. These are cool though.
It is why, it is my hope, my prayer, that in these turbulent times, working together and with our international partners, we can stem the beating of plowshares into swords.
And Latin, as it overtakes, turning men into bees, became seen culture of a lion, not facing, but hiding in sculpture and hovering over in mosaics. "38 Indians were hanged on President Lincoln's orders, following a bloody massacre of settlers and soldiers guilty of murdering unarmed citizens. He commuted death sentences for remaining Indians. Enormous scaffold, 24 feet square, was erected in cattle, apples, Minnesota, men's for the public hanging." It's like Orwell's pig done turned to be like, oh well. On the morning of December 26, 1862, the condemned Indians mounted the scaffold. I guess if they don't want to have Christmas, they're going to celebrate on their own. Mounted the scaffold. Ropes were looped around their necks. As the platform fell from beneath the Indians' feet, 4,000 civilians cheered. The bodies were buried in a common grave, and the rope used in the hanging was cut into small pieces and distributed to spectators. And there was a hole looped down on their necks, an enormous scaffold, 24 feet square. $6 million of them. In a huge whitewash, historians usually mention the Sioux massacre only briefly, and failed to point out "4,000 people cheered joy." Yeah, it's like St. Boniface stood that big old oak tree. They could feed everybody in the village. Dedicated to, if it was the God that made the thunder. And he wasn't facing just a tree. In his mind, he was confronting an entire pagan worldview, have they say. So somebody whispered in his ear, told him, cut down an oak tree to feed all you. The crowd expected him to be struck dead. He took an axe to the sacred oak. The pagan gods didn't answer, but they sure robbed the people of all the oak acorns. And they have since gotten used to being encouraged to think what they're thought and what they're taught. Hickory dickory dock. And Antiochus, they're saying this seventh here. They can easily put a X. King of Syria. Because sometimes I speak over, not explaining. Like Alexander didn't kill his uncle, but it was actually his brother-in-law, sister's husband. But he was old enough to be his uncle because his sister had children his age, Alexander's age, that went on and took over the East. The same facts are narrated by Josephus and others, but this is about Antiochus VII by this Syria moving on down against Jerusalem first. The first campaign against Jerusalem from Antiochus, say the seventh. So it was Alexander's brother-in-law. He let go. Campaign against the Parthians, Antiochus. Again next, in a hunt to chase, wandered away from his friends and servants. Unrecognized, entered the hut of some poor people. At dinner he brought in the subject of the king, and heard that, in general, he was a decent man, but that he entrusted most matters to friends who were scurvy fellows. Scurvy fellows, and overlooked and often disregarded matters that were important, according to him, that were imperative through being too fond of hunting, not paying attention. At the time, he said nothing, but daybreak, some of the bodyguards arrived at the hut, and his identity was disclosed when the purple and the crown were brought to him. Howbeit, said he, since the day when I donned you, yesterday was the first time that I heard true words about myself. The Jews was being besieged Jerusalem. The Jews, when he was being sieging Jerusalem. The Jews, when he was besieging Jerusalem, asked for an armistice of 7 days for their most important festival. And then they continued to besiege Jerusalem. And he not only granted this, but he also made ready bulls and gilded horns and a great quantity of incense and spices, and brought all these possessions as far as the gates. Then, having transferred the offering into the hands of their priests, he returned to his camp. The Jews were amazed, and immediately after the festival placed themselves into his hands. And the T words for the day is a coin, tendidos, and according to a narrative, janiform head, male and female. It is definitely a battling female, and it says maybe it's Bacchus, androgynous or something, because you don't really know. It's not feminine, it's not bearded. Dimorphos says, and again, double axes on the other side, reverse. Under King Tyndareus. This is Aristotle says about Tyndareus, refers this type to a decree of a king of Tyndareus, which enacted that all persons convicted of adultery should be beheaded. He is, however, certainly wrong in this interpretation, as Leakey justly remarks. So, Aristotle's not always right, according to somebody. Leakey remarks, such subjects were never represented on the money of the Greeks. Bacchus and Janus heads, which are Roman, because they were, just like we'll find out from another name, are represented by other cultures as on one aspect you could call it friendly terms, on the other aspect not. Their types, they're named in men and women. Such subjects were never represented of Janus and Bacchus on the money of the Greeks. Their types, like their names of men and women, were almost always euphemistic, generally to their ancestors, relating generally to the local mythology and fortunes of their ancestors, with things reminding them of them, or to and on the numina. And then where certain people are talked about, and if certain people are talked about, there's a reason for them to say something about them. And axes on the back and what they are, dedicated at Delphi. It's the Oracle of Josiah. Go down and hold the book, library, queen of the library, keeper of the wardrobe. And then, just like I heard it again today, Alexander from Timnus, son of Hercules, descended the Timnia, who long reigned in Argos. Of this line, the last who bore the name of Timnus was the father of Caranus, also an Argive. Caranus, also called Achilles, the 16th in descent from Hercules, flourished towards the year 772 before the Christian era, and was the founder of the Macedonian kingdom. From his brother Cronos descended. He was succeeded by Racchus, an illegitimate son, and the later by Orestes. But Orestes was slain, his garden Europus, under one of these. And dude come in there and cut down all the acorns, fed the whole place. Under one of these, Pausanias claimed. Meanwhile, the throne was filled by the third brother, Perdiccas, namely Philip. And then to Alexander II, and then Philip, three brothers, reigned in succession. Philip II had a bunch of wives. The first wife was something, and had an eldest daughter, had children. And being that much older, when her dad, Philip II, had later children in life, then her brother would be Alexander the Great. So, her husband did have a husband at the time. She was a pistol, though. Alexander didn't like her husband. Arranged stuff to happen. We just make Alexander the Great David. We'll put over there, say, his sister over there, Bathsheba, getting on her husband, make go boom boom. And with Achilles commences the ambitious pedigree among the offspring of his son Paris and numbered Pallas, whose mother was Andromache, Hector's widow. The imperfect memorial of descent passes down to Alcon, whose immediate progenitors are unknown, but he is said to have been of the race of Pallas, from him descended. Admetus, king of Epirus, Alcitus, Neoptolemus, Olympius, Alexander the Great. Olympius Hamath was the utmost point of the land north, and is by some of the Jews understood to be Antioch, by others Phiphiana. There were same kingdoms named from it, as Hamath Sobah. Hamath was the utmost point of the land north, and is by some of the Jews understood to be Antioch, by others Phiphiana. There were some kingdoms named from it, as Hamath, Zebah, Herbda, mention of Israel in the wilderness. Mention of Israel in the wilderness. Ashereth of the Gentiles hath its name from Chotron, woody places, and was in Naphtali. Hargan was one of the mountains which was placed signal fires, perhaps some part of North Lebanon, and might have its name either from the Syriac word hever, which signifies white, or from the Hebrew word hor, which signifies a cave, being white with snow, and hollow with subterranean passages, however situated in the extreme parts of the land toward the north. Hazar, Hazar is a frequent name in the south of Judah. Hazar-Dada, Hazar-Gada, Hazar-Shur, Hazar. Hazar, as it signifies a plain or champion betwixt hills. Hazar-Nenum in the Roman copy is Ashernaim. It was the utmost bound of the land towards Syria up north. And it's also a name in the south of Judah, Hazar. But in the Roman copy, it's the utmost bound of the land towards Syria. Hazareth was 25th mansion of the Israelites. Hazor, metropolis of Canaan, that is, the northern country, another reference up north, which is known as that name. It lay on Lake Sam. Dan the man had around Tamar. The Hebrews were Jews dwelling in Judea, to whom the Hebrew, that is, Syria or Chaldee, was the mother tongue. Syriac Chaldee. Phoenicians, Syrians, Phoenicians, pagans, Greeks. And then you got Hebron. Signifies consociation, and it was so called perhaps from the pairs buried there. For here they say was the place they were buried, at Hebron. Adam and Eve, and Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac, Rebekah. It's the hill country of Judah, south of Jerusalem, but a little towards the east. It's like a samurai warrior. Every time I look at this, I like seeing this. And it says, like, good stuff, and clemency, and fairness, and peace. They're having riding in a buggy. And it's peace. And it's temperance, liberal acceptance, equality, justice, and clemency, stuff like that. But when I see it, I see this, and this is what they got. And they're having, and you got this one guy right here. See this? He's like, hey man, you're forgetting security. Come get, and they're like, la da 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 da. I do. It's like they're just prepared for whatever. Got some temperance. They're administering justice. Not giving shit, not taking shit. And it's the same one. It's a cool buggy though. This dude down here saying, hey man, you forgot your security. They're like, la da 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 da. This is security. Saying hickory dickory dock, 3-line my. See how they run. It's like it's always a question. It says that, Moses said, let my people go, and it said, suppose that old Pharaoh and all the chivalry of old Egypt denounced him as the most furious abolitionist. Said there were those who loved Egypt better than they loved liberty. So they're calling Egypt not liberty. It's a trick. They were Israelites with Egyptian principles. So they're saying Israelites loves liberty. Does that mean that the Egyptians hold to bondage? Well, if the same message from good is the same message from bad, only on interpretation, then yes. Because you find out the liberty that some had, that the Egyptians, according to, I imagine, an Israelite, there were those who loved Egypt better than they loved liberty. And if liberty is a good thing, then whoever thinks this thinks that definitely they thought that Egyptian was not liberty. Senators Wade's Burr hit the mark. Judah Benjamin had deserted the religion of Moses, because Moses obviously loved liberty by their standards, and said that he had denied what Moses had said, that Moses wanted liberty. He spat on the law of freedom. So he's saying that Benjamin was against freedom, spat on liberty. So then we find out what liberty is, the gift the Jews celebrate on Passover. So since then, other Israelite principles. So Egypt is not liberty. And it tells you when they found out, one voice, about a space of 2 hours, they cried out, "Great Diana of the Ephesians." They say, "Great Diana." Great is Diana. They didn't say great is Artemis. And that's exactly what they do. They just make a word. They said, and the saying pleased the whole multitude. But then as they increased, and Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and miracles among the people. Then there arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines, and Cyrenians, and Alexandrians, and of them Cilicia and of Asia, disputing with Stephen. Transplants already, because they're saying great is Diana. And if they're in a elder Greek city, and they don't say great is Artemis, that's like someone talking about George Washington. They ain't putting up with that. Ain't putting up with it at all. So then the stubborn man which said, "We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and against God." The libertines were telling them to do peculiars. So this was their word for freedom. Freedom in doing what you're told to do. So when they tell you, pay attention. This is their definition of freedom. Not to go against any words or say anything about Moses at all. And they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes. He came upon and caught him and brought him to the council and said false witnesses. It said, "This man ceases not to speak blasphemous words against place and law and elders and respect. If we ever heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth shall destroy this place." and shall change the customs which Moses delivered us. And so that's not freedom, and that's not liberty, by their definition. Lift not up your horn on high, speak not with a stiff neck, for promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but it cometh from the north. In Judah is God known. His name is great in Israel. In Salem also is his tabernacle, and his dwelling place in Zion. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in thy hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and the adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. That's a cool rhyme. But my horn shalt thou exalt like the horn of a unicorn. I shall be anointed with fresh oil. To declare the name of the Lord in Zion, and his praise in Jerusalem. O ye seed of Abraham, his servant, ye children of Jacob, his chosen, he is the Lord our God. His judgments are in all the earth. He has remembered his covenant forever, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations, which come to be made with Abraham, and his oath unto Isaac, and confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel for an oath, everlasting covenant. Everlasting covenant, saying, to thee will I give the land of Canaan, the lot of your inheritance. God has spoken in his holiness. I will rejoice. I will divide Shechem and mete out the valley of Succoth. And that's over there on Transjordan as well. Gilead is mine, Manasseh is mine, Ephraim also is the strength of my head. Hold not thy peace, O God of my praise, for the mouth of the wicked and the mouth of the deceitful are opened against me. They have spoken against me with a lying tongue. They compassed me about also with words of hatred, and fought against me without a cause. For my love, they are my adversaries, but I give myself unto prayer. And they have rewarded me evil for good, and hatred for my love. Dude. Yeah, they latched onto a cliff, hung on for dear life. Though we heard of it at Ephrathah. We found it in the field of the wood. We will go into his tabernacles. We will worship at his footstool. And the ark of thy strength. We have heard of it at Ephrathah. But said, come, take a towel, son of man, and lay it before thee, and portray upon it the city, even Jerusalem. Measure it down, moreover, take thou to thee an iron pan, and set it for a wall of iron between thee and the city, and set thy face against it. Bring out tile, lie thou also on the left side, and lay according to numbers on the one side, and then when it's accomplished, lie again on the right side. It said, thine arm shall be uncovered, and thou shalt prophesy against it. So we measured it on the left side and the right side, and the wall, iron between thee and the city. And looking at it straight ahead, thou shalt drink also water by measure, the sixth part of a hin. From time to time thou shalt drink. Now, if that's not Passover, being a communion, knowing you got to wait in between before you have another sip, and thou shalt eat. From time to time thou shalt drink. He's in a cave, hid out, away from it. He says, thou shalt burn with fire a third part in the midst of the city, when the days of the siege are fulfilled, and thou shalt take a third part, and smite it about with a knife, and a third part thou shalt scatter in the wind, and I will draw out a sword after them. Then take of them again, and cast them into the midst of the fire, and burn them in the fire. The hand of the Lord was upon me, and carried me out in the Spirit of the Lord, and set me down in the midst of the valley, which was full of bones, and caused me to pass by them round about, and behold, there were very many in the open valley, and lo, they were very, very dry. And he said to me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, Lord God, I knowest. Again he said to me, prophesy unto these bones, saying to them, you dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith God unto these bones, behold, I will cause a breath to come into you, and you shall live. And I will lay sinews upon you, and will bring up flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, breath in you, and you shall live. Shall know that I am the Lord. So I prophesied, and I was commanded, I was prophesied. The noise, and behold, the shaking, and the bones came together. Bone, bone, them bones. Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are a whole house of Israel. Behold, I said, our bones are dried. Hope is lost, cut off on parts. Therefore prophesy and say, O people, open your graves, and cause you to come out of your graves. Bring you into the land, and you shall know that I am the Lord. If I open the graves, bring you out of your graves. It's a rap song. Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel and his fellows, and put them even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, be one hand. Complete. Just sticking it. Write a shall in thine hand before thine eyes. I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel. Moving on up, what they said. And David, my servant, shall be king over them, and they shall dwell in the land I have given to Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein. Then shall ascend and come like a storm, and thou shalt be like a cloud, and to cover the land, thou and all the bands, and many people with thee. Thus saith the Lord God, it shall also come to pass in the same time, shall things come into my mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. And thou shalt say, I will go up into the land of unwalled villages, and will go to them that are at rest, and dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls. and neither having bars nor gates. The tree that thou sawest, which grew and was strong, whose height reached into the heaven, and the sight thereof to all the earth, whose leaves were fair, and the fruit thereof much. It fed everybody, and in it was meat for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and us and everybody made bread, loaves, and upon whose branches the fowls of the heaven had their habitation. That they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and they shall wet thee with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. And whereas they commanded to leave the stump of the tree roots, thy kingdom shall be sure unto thee, after thou shalt have known that the heavens do rule. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beast, and his dwelling was with the wild asses, and they fed him grass like oxen. And his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointeth over it whomsoever he will. And regardless of when it happened, the kingdom was divided, and later from top went down to Shiloh. And it doesn't matter how it happened, because they were divided one time and moved on down to Shiloh. Whether it's fair. And there's always somebody writing. He said, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing. Whisper in my ear. Tell me, is it so, that it be not changed? But was it going to be changed? According to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. Because the 4 beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first one was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, the second, like a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth, bit between the teeth of it, and it said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. You know, the bear. It's interesting about a bear. They will say Napoleon, and Napoleon II. You know, there was a Franco-Russian alliance, and then later on, even afterwards, they sent to get marble up in Russia for Napoleon's tomb and all, and then it kind of felt bad about invading it. Everybody got a Waterloo. They were working around. But then later it was against the Germans. United States into an eventual model, but brought stuff But as far as liberty and freedom, it says Jews as well as to others outside. There was twice as many Jews fought for the Union as for the Confederacy. Northern Jews, many of them are recent German immigrants. Many are transplants, but some are just outright fakes. They're just fake. Some are outright fakes. And some are just outright fakes. And part fake or less fake or more fake, who knows? With their rebar in it. Yeah, hath God said, divine way of working, for God is not the author of confusion. That many have sought to escape from the difficulty by regarding the detailed account given in the first of Genesis as not that of the original, as if there would be a problem to have to do it to begin with, but rather that the recreation or reconstruction of a material world already existed and ready, for some unexplained reason brought to confusion. So they say that, and then they do something else. The prophet Isaiah states explicitly that God created not the earth, a desolation. They say it. And then they say, and in this view, there is nothing contradictory with Genesis saying, as it apparently does, that the earth which God had created in the beginning became desolation and emptiness. Hath God said. So in a world where the illumined is also the name of a sect of heretics who sprang up in Spain about the year 1575 and were called by the Spaniards Lambradas, the illumined. Their principal doctrines were that by means of a sublime manner of prayer, which they had attained to, they entered into a perfect state, that they had no occasion for ordinance or sacraments nor good works, and that they could give way even to the vilest actions, I guess, without sin. And then you got the ones called the liberties, trying to tell everybody to recite Moses a certain way, and then written from a perspective, the illumined are not making an issue with it because of square and compass. It's that whole balance. But here lies the problem. People with definitions attached to their names some dude named Wise Hawk is celebrating the history of some clubs and was founder of the Order of the Illuminati of Bavaria. But a Bavarian philosophy is not necessarily copacetic to an English one, among whom he adopted his characteristic order name of Spartacus. And that's what I wanted to camp on a minute. So I got one saying illumined, meaning they are free from public opinion on them Dylans, like everyone, and calling himself Spartacus. It's like almost anything named terrible is good. I wonder about Ivan the Terrible. But it's, yeah, the Frank and Russian Germany. But then later, this whole area, just think of trying to feed this bunch. You got to control the Baltic, Black, Caspian, somewhere in there. Because there's a lot of mass. And at the time, terrible, what was it? Terrible. Ivan Terrible, but under Catherine the Great. And with people coming in with the same philosophy, it's one thing. When people coming in with a different philosophy, it's another thing. I think that might be a factor. But they come on up there. It's interesting about Russia, though. They say bear. And it was said, even Napoleon's day, whatever, it's interesting. Russia's here too. Heard the same thing from people. Same person was Lewis Clark Lewis. Leisure. Charles Lewis Leisure? Maybe. No? Yeah. Charles Lewis Leisure. Whispering Napoleon's whatever, and doing some stuff. And getting them to invade one another. But you still got to control the Baltic and Caspian, somebody, and get along. Black. And then even with Ivan, it's like third, fourth, with the uprisings. And then you read about it in later books, and they'll say, well, these weren't even Slavs down here, these Cossacks. They were of a Celtish, Scythian variety. Cossack. They say, scratch a Russian, find a Cossack. Scratch a Cossack, find a bear. But with the infiltration of different peoples and philosophies, all bears aren't bears. And by the 5th, 6th, 7th, 10th century, with already populations, and with up until the 10th, on up to the 15th, 16th, 17th, leading over even into Napoleon's allies or French sentiments. But what is a French? What is a Slav versus, and so the earlier Celt variety had already left, but a descent of claimants in one form or fashion that are getting denied access by somebody playing Slavs and them against one another, whispering in Russia's ear at the same time, and France here at the same time, and over in Louisiana at the same afterwards, and Italy, and France, and Catherine, Peter the Great, on to Peter the Great, and it was even quoted later to Ivan the Terrible, and even through Peter the Great's donation, quoted by, allegedly already been proven false, but even by Truman. So this influx into this region has not really changed in a long time. It has changed, though, because it wasn't really a place. They wear funny hats. And when you find people with Moses as king in that area in the 9th, 10th, 11th centuries, then you can call them Scythians or Celts. It's weird, even at that time. And then on further, these ionic identifying people that get labeled these things later by other authors from places. Dangling in masquerade on my unsuspecting abdomen all these years. Why not? If there are communists in the League for Peace and Democracy that make the League a communist front, and if members of that front are also members of Greek Beta, Alpha, Gamma groups, it's just communist fronts, and that's why. Because it's simply to name oneself Spartacus as a Greek and aspire to communism. So Spartacus' motives remain a subject of debate. Motives. Doesn't matter. Knows what he was. Some sources suggest he aimed to escape Italy. He was a slave. They caught him, while others hinted broader social reform goals. His legacy has endured, inspiring cultural work. So just because you're a rebel doesn't mean you're a rebel for the good, and becoming a symbol of resistance and revolutionary movements influencing such figures as Karl Marx. But Spartacus, as a Greek, would have never been a communist, and to settle the rebellion interpreted as an example. That's why they trick on top of trick. They're bad to the bone, because they portray something they're not and make something out to be something that's not. They're working double time, oppressed people fighting for their freedom. It's crazy that Acts says that the libertines were the ones, not the liberties, not the freedoms, they were the ones that were telling you got to do this and that and that. But how the definition has changed. And with the Illumines are saying that they are grace. They are sola fides, illumines. And the thing about it, libertine by word is, but they were called something not that. Not grace. And how Arius can get split up from Sabellius, and Nestorius, Cyril, and then Nestorius ended up being something he did not say, as a reflection of that name really meaning what they have tried that Nestorianism made out to be, because they never said it. They argued for nature, but depending on the definition of nature, it's like Arius said, when it comes to persons, and Sabellius, and then a Trinitarian for persons, separate persons, on top of Nestorius said separate natures. And then they said, no, it was it was, or one nature said, no, it was separate. Will make them not divine. Portrayed in literature, television, and film, the philosopher Voltaire described the Third Civil War. Yeah, that's where Spartacus was, the only just war in history, although the interpretation is not specifically contradicted by classical historians. No other historical account claims. I heard somebody say that you could just read Greek forever, never read enough, and yeah, you can. Stuff's written about it. But the Alexander, I heard somebody say it and it was gone. I'm like, no, he didn't do that. That was burnt before him. They be trying to tell all kinds of stories. They burn libraries. But you get a little bit in Slavery and Republic. It's amazing we can tell in between it. Why do we not have Justin or all of Celsus against Celsus and all against Justin, Porphyrius, and rebuttals? Because they kept Cyril of Alexandria, because they have something in store 100 years away. They're chess players. When a century or more after the death, Plutarch and Appian of Alexandria, some of the most specifics, are Life of Crassus, after 2nd century, and Plutarch and Civil Wars, Appian. Out of all the surviving sources on Spartacus, none was written by eyewitnesses and are all later reconstructions. Nor were the sources written by slaves, former slaves, the earliest source, and he was captured by the Roman. If I know that the Thracian government was different than the Roman government, then I know he was not a communist. The Greek essayist Plutarch describes Spartacus as a Thracian, nomadic stock, a possible reference to the Mede tribe. Appian says he was a Thracian by birth, who once served as a soldier, mercenary, then until he started acting up, has since been taken prisoner and sold. Florus describes him as one who, from a Thracian mercenary, had become a Roman soldier and had deserted and become enslaved. From considered of his strength a gladiator. Authors refer a Thracian tribe that accompanied the area of the southwest fringes of Thrace, along the border with the Roman province of Macedonia. So they say they're Thracian. They want to say these people, he was communist. He obviously wasn't communist. And now, southwestern Bulgaria from Thrace. Plutarch also writes that Spartacus' wife, prophetess, Mede tribe, was enslaved with him. The name Spartacus is otherwise manifested in the Black Sea region. Black Sea, Baltic Sea, Caspian Sea, 5 other 20 kings of the Thracian Spartic dynasty. Bosporus, Pontus, also known to have borne the name Thracian Spartacus, or Xuthus of the Odyssey, is also known. Father of Xuthus. Descended from Sparta, Hercules, the Seleucus, and Alexander. One modern author estimates that Spartacus was 30 years old at the time he started the revolt. Oh, so wait, there's hope. Dracula didn't start piking people till he was in his 30s, so that's a good thing. Spartacus was 30 at the time he started his revolt, which would place his birth around 103 to this calendar. Yeah, always remember Dracula didn't start his head piking till he was in his 30s.
So it's been proved. So the Jewish people in Israel will be referred to as the descendants of the Jewish people in Africa, and not the other way around. Not on the other way. Difficult to make it admitted by them. Difficult to make it admitted by them. Difficult to make it admitted by them. You know what you are? You are an ancient Israelite. That's what you are. honest, this is pages and pages of notes. And I promise we'll give more teaching. But here is my challenge to you. All right. I'm hearing some of your traditions. It's like the days of the Bible. Yes. Do you want to remain ancient Israelites? Or you want to be Jews? Do you want to remain ancient Israelites? Or you want to be Jews? Do you want to remain ancient Israelites? Or you want to be Jews? Hitler was, and the Nazis, of course, expanded on Margaret Sanger's approach to eugenics, right? Eugenics was a movement that was born in the United States under hard doctrines of racism with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them.
I have a seance, baby, on the table right there. Reagan, Patty, Gorbachev urges a new world order. Good talks. Soviet president calls for U.S. partner. And it's like with Russia, later, all through the Renaissance, 14th, 15th century. And with even way before Lenin, though, what is their Ivan under the Okhrichnina? And you had people coming in, and they were trying to control the Baltic, the Black Sea, and all. And they called them Slav Cossacks, and the French. How they responded and lack of response. And everybody's trying to get along. But you have to have some water. And later on, there's wars. And one of the things they did was try to implement property, where when you died, it got put back into the system. It was even written about. But that's under the banner of Spartacus. That's not Spartacus, nor is that today's liberty. But that is maybe the liberty that's in an old language definition, saying you got to do this, that, and that, all over the kingdom in that regard. And Russia, Soviet Union, whatever it is, hasn't changed in a while. And different, but similar, is the Grecian world down here. This is where that, somewhere in there, there's probably not this big one, it's just probably this one. Runs into, what is that, the Mediterranean or something? And that would be the last of the Greek people philosophy down in this area. Because what later called Greek after that was not the Greek philosophy either. It's a communism, it's a control. It's funny. I've told you this, I'll say it again. The message is the same. It's the philosophy. It's the understanding. Do what thou wilt. Do what thou wilt. Do what thou wilt. It's the whole of the law. See, if you want to do something that you don't need to do, that's on you, man. That's on you. I mean, there's enough to worry about. But the pervert, they pervert. That's what they do. They pervert. Yeah, the kids. Y'all take a break, get lunch, kindergarten, and come back. Ephesus is not in modern day Greece. And it's not even Ephesus. It's located in Turkey. However, it was one of the most wealthy ancient Greek city-states in the Mediterranean. A portion of it, 10th century, by Attic and Ionian Greek natures, philosophies. It was one of 12 ancient Greek cities that made a cultural and defensive network. They had a long history. Great as Artemis. Great as Artemis, Temple of Artemis. Great as George Washington, bunch of perverts. Home to one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It's the same ones you want you to say. You can't say that because he was this. And then if they can't get you to believe something different, then they'll make him be out something he ain't even about to be. Sly freaks. After Greek rule, it came under it. The very thing he is to be nothing. See that? It came under the Roman Republic. It's not his job. In 129, becoming a major trading port. See? Yeah, she's finished up volume 3, if not, of Mercy Warren. Everybody, required learning in the elementary. Mercy Warren, required learning. Along with Harriet Mills. You gotta know them too before you get out of elementary school. Gotta do that. That's what you do before you swing and pick them up. So you pick them up and rack them like a baby. But just hold their horns, that way they don't hit you right there in the face. Great as Artemis. See that? George Washington said, I ain't putting up with that mess. Artemis. We got bow and arrow right there. And then they come around and they be like, all right, I'll get it. Then I tell you, come over, and then later on, they sneak in there and act all crazy and they burn it down. Burn down the library at Ephesus. Sons of guns. Yeah, that's what they do. And look at that. Then they change it. Then they change Artemis to this right here. Look at that right there. Look at that. That's not Artemis. I mean, just... y'all crazy. And y'all listen to them. See? That's some Diana's on steroids or something. I don't even think Diana like that. I seen an old boy over there on, I get on that doom scroll, but it only takes me about 2 seconds. I flip. I might listen to the minute one if I got a minute. Then by the time I'm like, no, and I flip the next one, and that's at hell no too. So, but I went, and I'm like, straight to, they're like, this is Ephesus, yeah. I'm like, okay. And this is where so-and-so went. And I'm like, yeah, oh, yeah. And they stayed there a long time, about 2 years. I'm like, well, yeah. Because that philosophy, you know. And they were like, yeah. And they're like, yeah. And they got to talking. Well, it took a while after 2 years. And the people that were around they were getting cut into about cutting into liberty. Because liberty was to do what Moses said and buy these silver trinkets to Diana. And we selling these things. We got to make $1 one way or another. So you're a mess. We're not putting up with that. That's what they said. And I'm like, great as Artemis. Great as Artemis. Yeah. I don't know about your damn Diana. And I didn't come here to buy no trinket for that. And even if I did, it'd be like I'm just coming to visit because I'm living over there in Thrace, Northumbria somewhere. And it's been moved. I find out it's been moved. See, it was over on one side, then they moved it over to another side. Rome took it over, called it Ephesus. These people about tired of it. Great is Artemis. And, but they'd have none of that. They tore it down. Under different names. Called different same names. Under different rulership. And they went on to say it was a capital of Rome and times and this, that, and great, everybody come see it. Well, there's nothing wrong with having a shopping mall. But it took 2 years cutting into your bankroll. Latins then moved all the way down there, from all the way up there in the other place. Built auditoriums. Called it Ephesus. And they moved it from way over there, way over here. Great is Artemis. You see, the old Greek, not Roman, not the slavery Spartacus, not the ones that took Spartacus in, but the real ones. And don't get on that me, you stuff, man. I'm trying to tell you, man. And it was, well, where'd you come from? And you talk about meanies and that. Like, see, he's a black man. Yeah, he was. There was a lot of those black man, red man, blue man, whatever. You tops. Hey, white man. And old. Not under facade of rulership, communism. And certainly not what they portray some. But old Greek. It's over there. And they moved it over here. Great is Artemis, who kept us from communism. It's a mixed bunch. This thing didn't have horns on it. Oh, Croesus. Here's the thing about it, though. That's what happens. See, there's whispering Russia's here and whispering Poland's here at the same time with that Louis something Charles. What's that dude's name? Leisure. Charles Louis Leisure. And others. And then they get them all fighting. And like Greek, See, Lydia, start out right there. Lydia, you got Croesus. You got over there whispering in his ear. It's like, come over here. I tell you what, man. We're going to go over there east. We're going to take over the Persians, make your empire be bigger. What's we going to do? Over in Lydia. That's about where you start. You start wherever, but then be like, yeah, I don't know about that. Listen, I'm going to talk to Huldah, find the law, because I don't know about it. Yeah, man. Meantime, you got somebody over in Rome, over in Italy, talking about this and that and the other, and who you going to team up with, you got to do this, you got to do something. And they whispering over here, and Croesus says, listen, now, I'm going to the Oracle of Delphi, we're going to see what's going on. And Oracle of Delphi says, hey, Croesus, listen, if you go over there and start that, a great empire is going to fall. You know this. Well, he didn't stop to ask some more questions. This, that, got that other guy whispering in his ear. Yeah. So he decides, well, I'm going to go over there and see over there. That was serious. Great. And Sirius said, listen, we're getting along and we're doing this and we're doing that. Trading and got hides and got rhinoceroses. We got elephants and bears. Oh, my. They're in danger today over there in Syria. And so he goes in there. Well, Sirius says, I don't think so. And he pushes him on back. And takes Lydia, just tears him up. And pushes his way all over. And they're like, yeah. The Greeks that are there. And she's like, and they're like, the Greeks is like astonished, yeah. They've been smashed. And, but Sirius says, listen, Sirius the Great says, listen, it's alright. You can, like, move your stuff back together and all, but you're going to pay me a little money, because your boss shouldn't know better shit like that. About that same time, somebody over in Rome, whispering in Rome, said, hey, man, you got to team up with Sirius right here, and team up with the Persians and all, and this and that, and they're just, in case something else happens. So you got Latin teaming up with over on the east, Sirius, which at that time they didn't start it. Later on, Alexander figures out that we got to put a stop to this because they're just taking over too much, and we're in the middle down there, and he come down there and pushed them back. But old Croesus, he whispered in the ear. They whisper in one ear, whisper in another ear, and then they get you fighting. They break them off. So Rome come down there. And see, this Spartacus right here. This is Greek. This is Greek. Later copied. And named Greek names. That's what I'm saying. Look at that. Rome come down there and turned Ephesus into Diana with some, look at that. That's some Egypt influence and everything. Latin that hooked up with it, Persia. Look at this. They said Demetrius silversmith. And Paul ran off. Said, you're cutting into our silversmith's making, man. And he said, hey, man, the libertines come down there and said, hey, they're talking about changing Moses, not doing whatever we got to do. We got to make you do it, this, and then get mad because we don't buy your trinkets of silver. Ooh-wee. So they turned. And then, see, people say, well, them Hellenistic Jews, them Hellenized Jews. No, see, the thing of it was the de-Hellenized Jews. It's the de-Hellenized Jews that were issued and took issue. Because Ephesus, even though it moved, is still over here with Sardis and Smyrna. And this is where it is anyway. See, they came, and instead of, see, they post this. That's what they post. Latin, eating up docks. It was at Ephesus, even right here, and all the way over to Corinth. But this was the early, the Greek. And it's like Theodotus or something. It was after the Nestorius and Cyril of Alexander, this and that. They were fighting here. And then they just cut off the Greek altogether. They were keeping up and wanting Romanization as much as they wanted them to be. And they outlawed the Olympic Games. Great as Artemis. Nothing wrong with them all. But see, they turned Artemis into some not a deer. Yeah, I read that. Probably sell for $2 million. A 700-year-old King Arthur manuscript. It says climate maps are derived from quite different sources than the zone maps. They are due to the influence of Arabic cosmographers and geographers who preserved the ancient Greek ideas about the world through those dark ages when they had been forgotten by Western learning. So Arab scholars wrote maps divided into climate bands or placed in south uppermost, but no very early Latin examples are to be found. And some of the rebuttals and againstness in books aren't found out, as the system was not generally known to students of Western Europe until the Middle Renaissance in 12th century. 12th century. So you got 10th century up there, Franco-Russian alliance, later against Germans. 10th century, Moses is our leader. In the 12th century, when Christian students and the assistance of Spanish, Muslims, and Jews translated many scientific treatises into Latin. No Mappa Mundi have been found in the works of Adelard of Bath. The earliest did these translators, nor in those of Gerard of Cremona, who was the most prolific. But examples, usually mere diagrams, are to be found in the 12th and 13th centuries. 12th and 13th century manuscripts of the Dialogues contra Judaeus of Petrus Alphonsus of Huska, of Petrus. Some medieval maps and all introduced 10th, 11th, 12th centuries of Petrus Alphonsus contra Judas. Dialogues against Jews, dialogues of Jews, of Petrus Alphonsus, otherwise known as Rabbi Moshe Shapardi, and in the Sphera of Sacrobosco, John of Hollywood. So this Rabbi Moshe Shapardi, while the more elaborate but still later map occurs in the work of Petrus Helicius, these Petruses that were really Rabbi Moshe Shapardis introduced in the first maps, and the Sphera, Rabbi Moshe's. So we got geographical and Sphera maps coming in 10th, 11th, 12th century, and there was none of the other world over there. And then the chronological system of the Jews was derived, like most of their science, from the Greeks. No. Which Greeks? They used the minion Setar. And remember, that's the day of reckoning, era of contracts. That's the time of reckoning, the calendar. They used the minion Shatarat, era of contracts. Really, the Seleucid era, dating from 312 BC till the Middle Ages. They got the post-Greek, when the method of reckoning from the creation of the world was introduced, probably by the later genome, as it was employed by Rabbi Shira. So you got the same chronologies and reckoning of chronologies from 300 in the day of reckoning till the Middle Ages, 10th, 11th, 12th century, not only of chronology coming in from rabbis, but rabbis changing their names to Petruses. And a monk of Durham, says he, were ill received by his contemporaries. He was denounced a heretic because he had taken upon him to assert in opposition to the fathers of the church that the Redeemer of our race was not born in the 6th millennium of the world. Notwithstanding this attempt, however, high reputation which Bede possessed. Bede was hearing whispers in his ear to change stuff. His system was generally rejected, and the Septuagint chronology still continued to prevail. Until the Simon Bar Kokhba tried to revive Hebrew and make it as the official language of Hebrews during the Bar Kokhba revolt, 132 to 135, depending on the calendar. Notice this shift from Aramaic to Hebrew, otherwise Syriac, Greek, during the time, and on into Latin. The Bar Kokhba revolt. Bar Kokhba. Possibly the change was made by a special degree of Bar Kokhba, who wanted to restore Hebrew as the official language of the state. They're doing archaeological studies, and it seems the change came as a result of the order that was given by Bar Kokhba, who wanted to revive the Hebrew language and make it official language. Bar Kokhba was trying to revive Hebrew language by decree as part of Messianic ideology. And at the same time, namely around 128, a new translation of the Hebrew into Greek was published under the auspices of the leading rabbis for the express purposes of supplanting the use of the Septuagint. This translation was executed by Aquila, who had been a pagan priest, then a Christian, and finally a Jewish proselyte. 2 years afterwards, did he change his name to Petrus? Namely, in 130, a Seder Olam Rabbah, or Great Chronicle of the World, was published by Rabbi Josie and patronized by the notorious Akiba, who in the reign of Adrian supported the pretenses that Bar Kokhba, the pretended Messiah. It was this work, the abbreviated chronology, was first brought out, and then was laid the foundation of the immense difference into the Sphera Globa Mappa, which now exists between the Hebrew and the Septuagint. Take again the chronology of the kings of Judah and Israel, and here too, it is impossible to close our eyes to the fact that some of the dates must have been altered by the carelessness of the transcribers. Manifest are the discrepancies that are united labors of the most eminent expositors and critics for hundreds of years have been unable fully to reconcile them. And every investigation that has been instituted on the subject has terminated in the conclusion that some mistakes in the transcription must have taken place. With these facts then before us, and others might adduce what become of the doctrine of divine inspiration. There is but one other fact of importance on the subject which is necessary to notice, and which I present the words of Bishop Russell. And there is every reason to believe the objective contemplated the projectors of the Septuagint were to fulfill the desire to entertain the rulers in the Greeks of the synagogue and supplying their people, resident in the Grecian kingdoms, with a copy of the law in language they could read and understand. And so we find that the version was authorized by the high priest, Sanhedrin, to be used in all the places of worship in faithful translation from their varieties, and as such entitled the same respect and veneration as the other. The Roman Church, too, though contrary to the Latin Vulgate, adopts substantially the same system, reckoning so many years from the creation to the flood. The same computation amongst the Copts, Abyssinians, the Armenians, the Ethiopians, and the Georgians. Before noticing, furnish all the internal evidence that can be required that the chronology has been fearfully corrupted. Secondly, there is positive evidence of corruption having been produced into the Hebrew Scriptures by those certains. It has been frequently stated by various authors that the others manifest. Examination of manuscripts and versions is charged possesses more than ordinary force. Eusebius presents the same charge for speaking of Justin Martyr. Observes that Justin records certain prophetical declarations in his discussion with Trypho, showing that the others had expunged them from the Scriptures. Moving things, Augustine also states that they were suspected of having moved things from changing to Hebrew. Which now exists between the Hebrew and the Septuagint. And these corruptions of the sacred oracles, however, did not pass unnoticed. Justin Martyr, addressing Trypho the Jew, observes, "I entrust you to remember that your rabbis have taken away entirely many texts of Scripture from that version, which was made by the elders who were at the court of Ptolemy, in which it was declared that they suffered death upon the cross was both God and man. Aquila, Epiphanes speaking of the same one of Aquila. And when those of the East celebrated Areophagus, the primate of the East, he flourished, and he was on further into the 1200s with the introduction of the sphere map and the Petrus map from Rabbi, as well as the chronology asserts that they believing have been foretold in the law of the prophets that there were things sent in the last times in order to produce a reason for rejecting him. They altered the chronology of the world and geography and sphere maps and changed their names. He observed being computed, and they weren't even being sought out. You heard? They're changing names to change geography. That's like digging up graves and moving them across over or somewhere else. Say you live there. Eldest sons were born. Tell them, great is Artemis. Great is Artemis. Great is Artemis. Great as Artemis. Didn't say nothing about Diana. And it's crazy though, Albert Pike. Albert Pike, at what point is it reprehensible to break treaties and promises to people that would otherwise find it irreprehensible to break promises? But treaties with the Indians. Albert Pike encouraged the Indians to break treaties and deals. And they were like, all right. Those rotten sons of guns. They do. They actually talk about whether Philo and Judea could even correspond in Hebrew, because he wrote so well in Greek. And about all sorts of stuff. The Shaman Bar Kokhba says, a student of Rabbi Akiva, he was a deeply revered Jewish tradition as a primary figure as legendary mystic. Many Jewish traditions attributed to the foundation text of Kabbalah, the Zohar, to him. And Mark Antony and Cleopatra don't get help. Let's say Pompey ends up with Jerusalem, like he said. Wasn't helping him, but was helping himself. Roman rule over Judea. Judas of Galilee begins resistance. They're still fighting up north. Jacob and Simon, First War, Revolt, the Kiddos War, 117, over in Cyprus again. That's why they're already moving in Turkey. As we speak, they're already getting on in Turkey's business, taking it over. Well, on that island, and maybe back over there on the other side now. They got him from the west. Construction, the Third War, the death of Adrian. They said it was Roman history, written by the principal history source. Devastating war between Rome and those there. He notes that the rebellion was sparked by emperor, and they trashed the north. Hadrian's decision to rebuild and a Roman colony put on the site. It was guerrilla warfare, and it carried on and on. Bloody for the Romans and everybody around. And you got on up until the 3rd century. You got Cassiodeo writing, talking about the Greeks and stuff down there, but he's writing from a Roman slant. And then when you get on up into the 6th century, it's called Greek over there. And the thing about it, when you see, you got to remember the 6th century, Justinian wars and stuff that was going on there, different stuff. It's in bits and pieces. And you find over there mosaic. And at this time, it does show a place as a site, Jerusalem. And you see the Jordan River. And it's there. And it's nice that you would have a reference to the Nile coming out. And down below would be Jerusalem. What we just saw on the map. And it's called Greek, and it's written in Greek. See? But see, this Greek from 6th century is not Hellenic Greek. Now, no, it's not written in Roman, but it's still the influence. Because they did not, they're still communists to this day. And not only that, with the map, what's interesting, Justin said he was building stuff and all. So yeah, you got Jerusalem, and there's the Jordan, but then right up here on that map, from the under Justin that said he built the walls and stuff around Beth-lehem. How come that piece of that map's gone right there? Ain't that crazy? And all the way up in 2010, they looked at it and they figured out a road. And they said, this must be the large gate. And it was then they found infrastructure near a Jaffa gate, large palm, large things, by looking at the map. And they just found what they thought was Ascalon for mosaic and art history. And they used a map and they said, well, that must be that many miles, heavily for the location and verification of a site of biblical days. Studied the map, played a major role in answering the question about where topographical location of Ascalon is. In 1967, excavations in the Jewish quarter down there revealed the Knee Church and Cardo Maximus. Well, I don't know more about that map. Very location suggesting the map. But it just says that Justin built a wall right over here. And it's on out of that map right there. Taken right out of there. That's interesting. According to Cyril, any truth that was in the Greek text was there as a result of the Greeks having heard it from the wisdom of Moses. Even Plato supposedly was a great admirer of the Jewish lawgiver. His reputation was thus an attempt to prove that Julian's view of the Platonic tradition as superior to the Mosaic religious tradition was in fact the reverse of the truth, as it was the Greeks whose words were a shadow of the truth of Moses.